You're in an ideological conflict right now, massive ideological conflict.
But how do you win that? Because
Well, this is now an info war. Interestingly enough, political commentator Alex Jones,
yes,
who is currently in a tit for tat with Donald Trump, because I still think that the guy likes Trump, honestly, and I think Trump kind of likes him back. But there's egos in this thing, right? They're gonna go back and forth for a while. Maybe it'll settle down. But he was right years ago when he said, primarily the weapons of warfare have changed domestically into more of propaganda. But really, when I started looking at it, I recognized he was kind of wrong in that. Going all the way back to our revolution, the Revolutionary War, it was all propaganda. I mean, all of it was propaganda. The very axioms of the Bill of Rights, propaganda, or Declaration of Independence, propaganda. It was all propaganda. It sounded really good, right? Got in that psyche. And it really, just imagine how good it must have felt to hear that. Like, we're free, right? God himself has ordained this land is ours, right? That sounds amazing. And that'll really get people turbocharged, won't it? That kind of propaganda. I think we just need to do the same thing back. The same way that we got here was through propagation in culture, subversion in culture. Subvert it back. Attack back the exact same way. Just do it way harder. So that's what I do, right? I'm a very, very teeny tiny gear in this large machine for sure. But I feel like I'm a rock in the shoe, right?
Sure.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shove this down your throat, essentially, this idea. Or I'll take your worldview on directly wherever it is that you are. And so the idea there is I'm beginning the push to push out the information. What would be propaganda has a negative connotation, but the way that we're using it here in this context, it's just for ease of the viewer to understand. Everyone understands what propaganda is, right? Or reverse propaganda. And yeah, that's what we need to do. You need to turbocharge it the other direction. And I think that the reason I've been very successful in what I do is because that's part of what I do. So I'm like, no, I'm going to refute all of this, and I'm going to move towards something that's prescriptive that makes a lot of sense. And even progressives that I debate with often have to be like, okay, yeah, some of that makes a lot of sense. You're right. It's like, yeah, exactly. So if you can propagate it that way, all that you need to change it with women is take the social ideas of feminism and eliminate the trend of them and have the trend go the other way.
Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, so women tend to follow trends in a big way, and trends inform a lot of their social behavior. They actually tend to hide, for the purpose of social cohesion, what they actually think about things and what they actually want, what they actually desire. A friend of mine, Homath, yes, it's his real name.
Is his real name?
No. I mean, it's an online handle, of course, right? But Homath, he's a big content creator, but he points this phenomenon out a lot about the hiding of intention. He's right. There's a lot of hiding of intention. They're not ever going to tell you that, and they'll even lie. Be like, I want a sensitive guy who cares about my feelings, and we have a lot of talks about this and blah, blah, blah. They don't want any of that lying through their teeth. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some women, I'm sure, who like that, right? There's some women on the opposite spectrum who just want to be brutalized or all of that, blah, 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 blah. I'm just saying that they will literally, for the purpose of, I'm going to be judged correctly by other women by having the correct woman think, which is, they just lie to you, right? I want a sensitive guy, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, you don't. You're lying through your teeth. And when you start diving into their view more, you find out that they are. And then they start to come clean after a while, right? But you have to really kind of dig into the view. But that's all propaganda. That's 100% propaganda. It's like, if I say this thing, I'm going to be judged poorly on it. So I'm just not going to say it, even though that's actually what it is that I want. And again, if you can eliminate the trend towards feminism or the trend towards this, and you see some conservative women beginning on that path, right? Where they're like, no, I think we just want masculine men who tell us to shut up half the time because we're being overly emotional, you know? And it's like, that might sound counterintuitive to you. You might be like, wait, what? What are you talking about? Women don't want it. It's like, a lot of them do. Yeah, a lot of them do. And they totally and completely lie about it publicly. Just totally lie about it. So what I'm talking about in switching trends is just being like, well, the feminism angle, right? Make that the thing that everybody hates. And make this other thing the thing everybody likes. And then women will conform to that. And then when women come out and say, I'm a feminist, blah, blah, then they'll socially shame her to death. They'll be like, no. That's not how it's good. That's how they operate. And so that's a way you fix that aspect is you fix it with supercharged propaganda. That's the way that it's always been done, by the way, with both sexes, but it's particularly effective with women. On the man's side, the incentivization is really simple. The incentivization for men has always been simple. Hey, you want to be able to afford a family? Most men never could traditionally reproduce. Now they can. You can have a family. You too can have this whole family thing. If there's ever a political system, political party that just focuses on that message for men, we're going to make it so that you can actually have a family and you can support it and you're the head of it. That, whatever that political organization is always going to do extremely well.
Is that kind of what Charlie Kirk was managing to do quite a bit?
Of course, he used TPUSA. By the way, there's late message Charlie Kirk, and then there's earlier message Charlie Kirk. Early message Charlie Kirk was soyish. Okay, it was like, I'm a civic nationalist, and he was really weak as far as a political right winger went. It was only after the Graper Wars with Nick Fuentes and having all of these people come up and ask him, hey man, how does having a bunch of help us win the culture war? How's this big tent conservatism helping us with anything? Did he begin to move closer to the position of an actual right winger? And closer to when he died, he was using much more of that messaging, the idea of like, really got to put family ahead of everything else, right? Men should have the dominant place in the household. Now, the left sneaks in and lies to you, and they always pretend that we're going to use force for this. Oh yeah, men are going to be the head of the household? Hey, you're going to enforce that. Huh? You're going to come in and tell them that, no, you don't, it's never how it works, right? What you do is you influence for social norms. That's it. So it's like, if a man isn't the head of the household, he thinks there's something wrong. He's like, wait, there's something going on here that's not correct, right? That's how you enforce things like that, through social pressure. You don't have to use force. That's crazy. But that's always the straw man of the other side, is that the right's going to come in and force you to, using force, just using the same thing that the left used. Propaganda, which is turbocharged, and incentivization.
Well, they do use force and violence.
When it comes to cultural subversion, they will use force, I agree, but they generally don't use force. They generally have much, much better ways to do it. They do it through media. They do it through cultivation of universities. That's one of their big recruiting grounds. And they do it through news stations, and they do it through mass media and propaganda. That's been the tool of choice for the left.
Yeah, that was a good thing Charlie Kirk did. Obviously, we're in the UK. We don't really have an equivalent. But what I always saw and admired that really stood out to me at the university campuses, he kind of made conservatism cool again. Because in the UK, I don't know how much you know about our politics, but conservatism is very much ties and shirts, aristocracy, old school, kind of look like lawyers. And I think
that's the same thing as Protestantism.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the Protestant uniform, like the Protestant evangelical uniform? It's basically like always a blue button-up shirt with a tie. It's like, well, I'm here to tell you about Jesus Christ.
And the young conservatives who've built a bit of a profile in the UK, they're all the same in a very dapper suit and tie.
Yeah.
But you talk about tents. It doesn't build a big tent with youngsters, but little things in these Charlie Kirk things where he's giving away the caps. You'd have the conservatives, but with the backwards baseball cap and the t-shirt, but they were conservative. Sure, but 100 years previous, is there a reality that this might be our world and the likes of you and I just have to accept it?
Look, I'm not trying to take us back in time, but tradition are experiments that worked. That's what a tradition is. What the hell do you celebrate Christmas for? right? It's not like you came up with it. Okay, somebody else came up with it and gave it to you.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, every year that I've done this, it worked. So I'm going to do it again this next year, and this next year, and this next year. That's what traditions become. They're experiments which work. You have your own family traditions, I'm sure. I don't know what they are. Your own little small rituals with your son, perhaps. I have mine with my daughter. For instance, I'll come in and I'll say, you know what time it is? She'll look over and she'll be like, yeah, I know what time it is. Like, yeah, it's time for you to get your ass kicked at Mario Kart. There's like, those become like little teeny tiny rituals in your own household, right? And things like that. Why? Because every time you've run this experiment, it's worked.
Yeah.
And so that's what a tradition is. And so if that's the case, I'm not saying, well, let's go back 100 years ago to when we didn't have computer systems and we lived like the Amish. I'm just saying that there's some traditions which I can clearly see worked. And if it's the case that they're reintroduced, will likely work again.
Is there two kinds there? We have traditions at our house. We have one every Christmas. I let the kids go under the tree and just pick one present on Christmas Eve, and they can have it that day. They don't have to wait for Christmas Day, and that's it. And they love it.
We do the same thing.
All right, great.
Yeah.
And they love it because they're looking at those presents and they want them.
Yeah. Well, and you're teasing them.
You're teasing
like
them,
in a way, aren't you actually, when you do that, kind of being a jerk, and that's what makes it fun?
Well, I'm their mama.
Yeah, exactly. You're being a jerk, right? And so
it's my tradition. I'm keeping it. But that's a tradition that has an instant kind of reward in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
But some traditions, the reward is like delayed. Like the reward of stable marriage and parenthood is something maybe you don't even have the kind of mental reason to realize at 20 how good that is. Because you're comparing the guy at home with 2 kids with the guy who's going out to the bar.
Well, what if it's just like ingrained into the very fabric of the social cohesion?
Most wallets still plug into the same system we were trying to escape in the first place. And that's why Rumble built Rumble Wallet. It's a self-custodial wallet that lives inside an ecosystem that actually defends free speech and financial freedom. No bank holding your balance, not even Rumble can touch your funds. This is your money, on your keys, on your terms. So if you're serious about sovereignty, financial and digital, this is where you level up. Go to wallet.rumble.com or search Rumble Wallet in your app store, download it, back up your recovery phrase, and move your money where it belongs, in your hands.
Is that how some traditions die? Some traditions die because the gratification is so delayed that that people don't wait for it. They can't wait for it. They don't realize.
I'm not sure any of these traditions have died exactly.
Well, do you know what I mean? But like,
I think new traditions are made, right? Of that become normalized, and those normalized kind of like set behaviors. We're calling them traditions, right? I'm not sure in this case I would use that word of tradition specifically for this, but something akin to that. Just the normalization of social behaviors. If you normalize social behaviors over a single generation, you're screwed. They're going to normalize it for the next generation, and then the next generation, and the next generation. That's how subversion works. And it's like subvert it the opposite way. It works the same exact way, right? The idea, for instance, in the United States, I'll give you a tradition that I grew up with, was the Pledge of Allegiance. You said it every morning, right? Now, we didn't even think about it. It's like, oh, the bell rings. Please stand for the pledge. We all got up, right? Hand over the heart, pledged our allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, right? That's what we did every morning without fail, Monday through Friday. And the teacher did too. The principal did. The principal would often be on the intercom saying the pledge.
Oh, is this not a thing anymore?
Done.
Everywhere?
Basically. I haven't seen it. In years. Now, maybe they do so in some places, but I think that they did away with it because the idea was like, you can't tell us that we have to pledge our allegiance to a flag. You know what I mean? This type of thing. But that tradition itself was so ingrained, I never even thought about it, right? But it certainly helped with the idea that I still have to this day of the undercurrent of patriotism. That's how effective it is. That even if I'm really off at my government, think that they're doing up with wars and this and that, I'm like, well, I still can't quite get past this. And I even know it's indoctrination. I know 1,000% that was an indoctrination. I'm still kind of just okay with it. I'm like, yeah, it was. But it was pretty useful.
Have you diagnosed where the subversion came from and why?
Oh, man. Well, it's multifaceted.
Yeah.
So bad ideologies lead to worse ideologies, and then worse ideologies lead to cataclysmic ideologies. There's a coalition of bad things in the United States that don't necessarily have anything to do with each other, but then became tied in with each other. One would be the idea of, and this was something which basically began with the country, Protestant destruction of theology really set a lot of the path, like the cults in the 1800s, the large Protestant cults they had cults and bizarre views on sex and puritanicalism and all sorts of different things. Those created spiritual movements and all sorts of other factions, which began to get heavily into various Enlightenment philosophies. And that helped to pervert the social fabric quite a bit. So,
is that when you had the separation of church and state?
Well, that's even before this.
Even before that.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but the separation of church and state, the secular aspect of it in the First Amendment, that's fine. It was always supposed to go to the states. The states all had religions even after the ratification of the Constitution.
Okay.
All the states had their own religion, basically. I think only 2 didn't. But it's the graduation of Protestant ideals. They fracture into different Jesus camps with different interpretations biblically. They don't adhere to a single tradition. That was the great strength of Catholicism and Orthodoxy, is that there's an intact tradition to appeal to. If you stray away from that, you're exorcised from the body, right? You need to get away from the body. You're no longer part of the church, which is the body. Protestants just fractured and made a new body, right? That's what they do. There's no right way to do this, after all. You say, Jesus loved me, and that's it. So you ended up with all sorts of Enlightenment cults, many of which were responsible for a lot of the roots of feminism. Then you had the ideal of communism as well. And the first thing communism did, of course, was destroy the traditional church. It's the very, very first thing they did when Bolsheviks went through and slaughtered Tsar Nicholas, who was an Orthodox. By the way, he's an Orthodox saint now. They sainted him. They butchered the Orthodox Christians there. The Russians just butchered them. And that was a very traditional church, right? But why? It's because the idea there was, if there's a community inside of communism that doesn't adhere to communism, we have a problem. And what did I say the great strength of the church is? Community. And so communism is right in the name, right? Communalism. And that doesn't work unless the entire nation is practicing communalism under that view. So if there's micro communalism going on that people adhere to more than the state, that needs to be done away with. Now, a lot of these Bolsheviks, right, and Kabbalists and various things like this, who had their own perverse ideologies, brought them into the United States in the 19th and 20th centuries. And that also created the perfect mesh with these various Protestant sects. And when you mash all these ideologies together, you end up coming up with all sorts of various bizarre ideologies that you don't even think about, like humanism, secular humanism, and the ideals of hedonism as a proper order and function of things, right? To just kind of destroy everything in their path for a new forms of idealism, which are all based around essentially one fundamental concept, which is my rights. I have a right to do X, Y, Z, B, right? But no duties. And so the Christian paradigm doesn't focus on rights. It thinks of rights as being tangential to dignity. Christians always focused things on human dignity in the image of Christ, right? What's undignified? What happened to Christ? That's undignified, right? How do you treat people with dignity? Well, here's how you do that, right? But when that's supplanted for rights, I have a right to this, I have a right to that. There's no entailment of duty which comes with those rights, but there is an entailment of duty which comes with Christian ethics for dignity. So I have a duty to treat you as I would want to be treated, right? I have a duty to do that under my ethical system. I have a duty to not. I have a duty to not do this. So you can entail a right that way. If it's the case that I have a duty not to you, then don't you have a right not to be? Perhaps under my view, yes. I would argue that a bit, but perhaps under my view, yes. But under the secular view, no. Under the agnostic atheist view, no. Under the moral anti-realist view, no. There's no entailment of a duty or a right. Right? So that's where a lot of this collapsed was
200-year-old problem.
Well, it was actually even yes, it's an Enlightenment principle problem, yeah. And built right into the flaw of this is democracy. The democratic social order itself is flawed from its foundation because democracy seems to always expand. It's ever expansive. They always want to include more people in the process. And by doing that, you actually cheapen the process. And so we've all become cogs in the machine of the American political machine. That's why so many people are involved, right? It's because you have to necessarily, if you universalize suffrage, create voting blocks for interests.
Sure.
You're part of interest groups, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Your interest groups could be, I don't know, economic reforms. They could be this, they could be that, but you don't have any power alone. So you have to get together with other people in order to create a block so that you have some sort of power that necessarily tribalizes people. And that's where tribalism here, political tribalism, comes from. It comes from the ideas of these various voting blocks that necessarily have to get together. Otherwise, they have no actual power. And so it becomes an us versus them game. And the tribalism is brutal and it's bad. It causes civil war, in fact. I mean, it's caused all sorts of mass conflict. And the more you universalize suffrage, the more you're going to end up with more and more tribalism. And now the tribalism's even moved between sexes. Women and men don't vote the same. They have very different interests.
Yeah.
And because of that, women and men are often competing against each other in the democratic cog machine. They create blocks against each other. Women create blocks to vote for abortions, and men create blocks to stop them. Like, that's a bad system. It's a really bad system, and the way that we organize society it's very poor. And we don't organize how you should organize a society is pretty easy, actually. You look at men and you look at women and you say, what can you do that you can't? This, then we're going to prioritize for that. It's pretty easy. What can you do that you can't? Well, I can have babies. Oh, can you have babies? No. Okay, great. Well, then we're going to prioritize society around that thing that you can do. What about you? What can you do that they can't? Oh, I can lift heavy, right? I'm very resistant to heat. I'm very resistant to cold, right? I can be a soldier. I can do many of these amazing things that they can't do, right? At least generally they can't do. Okay, great. Then we'll organize society around that too. So now we're going to organize society around
like
the
we
fact
used
that,
to organize.
Yes, exactly. Isn't that amazing? So now we're going to organize society based around the fact that you can have the children and you can't. Well, it's mind-blowing.
But do you think we can get back to that?
Of course. In fact, it's so simple when you explain this to people. It's like a light bulb goes off. They're like, yeah, actually, that is, why wouldn't we organize society around that? And it's like, I don't know. It's really, though, because like they're the only ones who can have the kids. Why do you want them to go to college? During the years, they need to have the kids. That's literally, why would you ever organize society like that? Why?